of selling. And the first thing is, obviously, you have to understand that you always get better results in sales, and certainly in life, but especially in sales, when you've got specific goals. Most people consider a goal and a resolution to be the same thing. But anybody who's got an ounce of intelligence knows that at New Year's, most people set resolutions, and they think they're goals. And it's a resolution like, I'm going to lose weight, which is probably the most popular one that happens at New Year's. In fact, health clubs make zillions of dollars in the beginning of the year from people who make a resolution to lose weight, and they way overbook their facility because they know that by January 21st, a majority of the people who signed up that month are not going to be showing up. So they make a ton of money selling these year-long memberships with people who they know aren't ever going to show up. So resolution is an expression of an opinion or attention, and it's got a determination to it, but a goal is more positive and more definite. It's the definition that I took from Webster's is it's the results or achievement toward which effort is directed. It's the terminal point in a race. And I don't think, in fact, I know now that I didn't have it when I met you, but I've co-authored a book called How to Be Your Own Coach. And it's about coaching yourself to success in reaching your goals. And some of the stuff that I'm going to go over today is directly from that book. It's actually, the subtitle is actually 6 Simple Questions for Achieving Your Goals. And my co-author, my co-author is actually my mentor in the speaking and training business. We wrote this book when he was training to swim the English Channel as part of a team. And the things that he did to achieve that goal, we actually took that plus we both built successful businesses. We took those things and we thought, if somebody paid us to coach them to success, how would we do it? And we realized that just like in selling, we would be asking them questions. So the 6 Simple Questions to Achieving Your Goals is what the book is based on, as if somebody had hired us to coach them to achieve a specific goal or goals. So highly successful salespeople and people in general tend to have large goals. And I always love to ask the question, what's the difference between you or me and Gandhi or Martin Luther King or Bill Gates? Well, the difference is really the goals are bigger and the commitment is greater. So when you're looking at goal setting, are you good with that, Jeff, by the way? Are you good with goal setting?
I am. I'm very good. If I need to stop you, I will. Thank you for asking, though.
Good. Okay. So the book that I wrote, and by the way, it's not one of those boring books. It's about 400 pages long, filled with stuff that you've already heard. It's actually about 30 pages long, and it's in full color. It looks like a comic book, and it's a lot of fun. It's only about 30 pages, but we go through these 6 questions. Of course, the first thing in goal setting is you have to figure out, what is my desired outcome? What's the goal? Now, where most people go wrong is they don't make their goal specific enough. So as a professional speaker, so you met me as a trainer, I'm also a keynote speaker, and companies like yours bring me in to come to conventions and motivate people and teach them stuff. And as a professional speaker, one of the things that's crucial is not only having good material, but you have to come off with a lot of confidence. You have to actually either be confident or act like you're confident that your material is actually good and it actually works. And because of that confidence on the stage, I get asked a lot of questions by people who've come to hear me speak, whether they paid to or whether their company has made them go, because they think, oh, this guy knows what he's talking about, simply because I'm confident. One of the questions I get asked most often is, what should I do with my life? Another one is, how do I be happy? How do I make a lot of money? Well, making a lot of money, being happy, changing your career, those are all great things, but you've got to be more specific. So let's stick with money. Almost everybody wants to make a lot of money, and it seems like a great thought, but very few are committed to it. And it's not a good goal. The first thing you have to understand is if you want to make a lot of money, the goal has to be specific. So the first thing I would ask anybody, including you, is how much money? If you want to make a lot of money, how much is enough? And that's a very relative and subjective thing. So a lot of money to Bill Gates is probably very different than a lot of money to me or you. So the first thing is your goal has to be, I'm sorry?
No, I said right. I'm agreeing with you.
Got it. Yeah, so you've got to be specific. The second thing is your goal has to be colorful and vivid. Now, what I mean by that is the more picturesque you can make the goal when you write it down, because, and that's the next bullet point, obviously it has to be written. You've probably heard that a million times, and I don't know whether you do that or not, but I always advise people to not only write down their goals, but post them where you can see it regularly. So, for example, I always suggest, and I know this may sound a little funny, that when you write up your goals, you post it in the bathroom, in your bedroom, if you've got one in your bedroom or wherever your apartment is. And the reason I always suggest you post it in the bathroom is because for most of us, the bathroom is the very first place we go in the morning. And if your goals are posted next to your mirror, you see them first thing in the morning and they sink into your mind. It's also, for most of us, the last place we go before we go to sleep. So once again, you've set up your day by focusing on your goals, and you're setting up your night by focusing on your goals, because whether you believe in the hairy-fairy stuff or not, and I do, when you read it just before you go to bed, it sinks into your unconscious, and your mind is working while you're sleeping. So it has to be written. Now, oh, by the way, I also suggest you have it in your office somewhere. So I've got my goals posted in my bathroom, and I've also got them in my office so I can look at them all day when I'm not out training. When I say they need to be colorful and vivid, I mean they should be as descriptive as possible. And the example I like to use is, one of the things I use is pictures. I not only have my written goals, but I have pictures. So one of the pictures that I'm staring at as we speak is a black Lamborghini Countach. It's been my dream car for years and years and years. It's about a $200,000 automobile, and I look at it. But my goal is not just to have a black Lamborghini Countach. It's, I want the black Lamborghini Countach, and I want it to be a 2010 because I like that model year, and I want the leather seats, and I want the blah, blah, blah. The more you can describe it, the more vivid you can make it, the more likely you are to focus on it effectively, because what you focus on tends to come into fruition way more often than stuff that you don't focus on. In fact, if you haven't read it already, I'll recommend a terrific book. You've probably read Think and Grow Rich, yes?
No, I did not.
Jeff?
No, I did not. I did not read that.
Oh, wow. Okay, so you write that one down, Think and Grow Rich. And that was written by Napoleon Hill. That's just, it's like the Bible for salespeople. But the other one, which less people are aware of than Think and Grow Rich, it's called The Science of Getting Rich. The Science of Getting Rich. And the author is Wallace, W-A-L-L-A-C-E, and his last name is Wattles, W-A-T-T-L-E-S. Wallace Wattles, like Napoleon Hill, studied successful people, and he found that they do certain things. One thing is that they focus with an almost unflinching focus on what they're trying to achieve, because what you focus on is more likely to be attracted into your life, whether it's money, a relationship, a car, a promotion, whatever it is you're looking for. The book was written, I think, in the late 1800s, and some of the language seems a little outdated, but it's still among the best books. By the way, very easy read. Probably take you, no more than one evening to read the whole thing. You can pick it up on Amazon probably for $5 or something used, $3. But a great book. But both books, Think and Grow Rich and The Science of Getting Rich, both agree that the more colorful and the more vivid you can make the picture of your goal in your mind, the more likely it is to be achievable for you, and the faster it's more likely to come into your life. You also have to have a time frame for your goals. Most people, even if they're specific about the goal, they're not specific about by when, and the universe, and I don't know what you call the creator, but it could be God or Buddha or Jesus or anything else, who's the term of the universe. The universe tends to respond to specifics way better than it does to generals. So I want to make a lot of money? Terrific. How much? I'm going to have $500,000 in commissions by December 31st, 2012. You're far more likely to achieve that one because it's specific, you write it down, and you have a time frame. You also want to make sure that your goal is something that you can be excited about. The best way to describe that is if it doesn't get you to jump out of bed in the morning, it's probably not a worthwhile goal. So people often tend to make their goals easy to achieve because they want to succeed. And I'm a big fan of having goals that you can easily succeed at so that you get into the feeling of success. But a goal like, I'm going to wake up every morning and brush my teeth. Well, I do that anyway, so that's not a very good goal, and it's sure not going to get me out of bed. But I'm going to triple my income this year and earn $1.2 million by August 12th, which would be pretty cool since that's tomorrow. That would be a goal that would get some people out of bed, and whatever the number is that gets you excited, that's what it should be. If your goal isn't exciting you, then it's kind of worthless. The next thing that almost everybody will agree on is you have to visualize your goals. Now, I'm very big on I call it the hairy-fairy or the woo-woo stuff, but I believe that creative visualization is one of the most useful things you can do in goal achievement. Are you familiar with creative visualization?
I am not.
Okay, so visualization is simply you close your eyes and you visualize yourself having already achieved the goal. So let's just actually I'll give you a different example rather than money. So I don't know if you're, gee, I actually don't remember back then, but I think I was already living here. I live in Long Beach, New York, and I live a block from the ocean. I live in a beach house. Why? Because I love the beach. Now, I like my house, but my goal is to have a much larger house of a different style with a pool, and I want to be the first house on the beach. In other words, my goal is I want to wake up in the morning, open my eyes, be able to pick my head up, and I want to see the waves from my bed. So one of the things I do is I visualize that picture. I visualize myself in my home waking up, picking my head up, and seeing the waves from my bed. The other thing that's important in visualization, well, I'll tell you the other thing in a second. The reason that visualization works so well is because your mind cannot tell the difference between reality and what you're thinking. Your mind can't tell the difference between, your body can't tell the difference between what you're thinking and what's real. The proof of that, if you've ever heard of Dennis Waitley, he was very, very popular in the late 60s, 70s, and early 80s, a big motivational speaker, kind of a coach-type guy, had a lot of, at that time it was tape sets, and he was a coach, a consultant to the U.S. Olympic ski team at the time. And they did an experiment where they hooked the skiers up to electrodes that could measure electrical impulses. You probably know, or maybe you don't, that your muscles have electrical impulses in them. So every time your muscle contracts or expands, it gives off an electrical impulse, and these electrodes could measure the strength of the electrical impulse in each muscle, as well as when it fired and for how long. And then they, after hooking these Olympic skiers up to these electrodes so they could be measured, they had them go down a ski run 5 times. So all they did was measure 5 times in a row how their muscles fired when they were going down the ski run. Then they took these same skiers and put them in darkened laboratories in comfortable chairs, laying back, and the instructions were, now I want you to close your eyes and visualize in your mind the ski run that you just did 5 times. And as you can imagine, after 5 times, you kind of know the ski run. You know that there's going to be a turn here and a mogul there and a jump here and stuff like that. Well, the interesting thing, actually to me, the amazing thing was when they were in the laboratory laying in comfy chairs, their muscles fired with the exact same intensity in the exact same length of time and in the exact same order as when they were actually on the ski slope, skiing.
Really?
Yeah, incredible, right? When I first heard that, it blew my mind. So you can actually trick your body and your mind into believing you've got the things that you want to have, and when you do that, they're far more likely to come true. They're far more likely to come into your life because we already have the belief that you've got it. That's called the law of attraction. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but it's called the law of attraction. What you focus on tends to come into your life, and the more vividly you focus on it and visualize it, the more likely it's to come to you and quicker. Now, on the screen you'll see it says visualize movie. Most people, when they do creative visualization, they visualize as a snapshot, as a picture. So for example, my beach house. I not only, rather than, I do have a picture of the beach house that I want sitting in front of me on my vision board, but when I'm visualizing it in my mind with my eyes closed, I see the same house, but instead of a picture, I see a movie. And what I see is me waking up, opening my eyes, seeing the waves, beautiful day, big waves, people are surfing, and then I watch my day turn into night, and I see my large deck. with a bunch of great people hanging out with a small band playing, and waiters and waitresses dressed up the outfits, circulating with drinks and fabulous food. And so the whole thing becomes more real, because in a movie, that's how life works. Life doesn't work as a snapshot. Life is a movie, yes?
Yeah, true.
Right. So you want to visualize whatever your goal is as a movie. Now, there's one other point we need to talk about, which is commitment. But before we do that, the thing that salespeople or sales managers tend to focus on in terms of their goals, and this is not a bad thing, by the way, the thing they focus on is money. Now, of course, salespeople should be focused on money. We're all money motivated. The reason that most of us go to work is so that we can earn money. It's not to save the world, although that's nice to do. It's not necessarily to help people, although that should be certainly part of what we're doing when we're selling. But most of us would not go to work unless we were getting paid for it. So the problem or the challenge is when your goal is money, the challenge is that the truth is you don't really want money. Does that make sense to you?
No, it doesn't.
Perfect. Okay. It shouldn't, but I'll explain it, and then it should make better sense. Do you really want more green pieces of paper with pictures of dead presidents on them? I'm going to answer that for you. The answer is actually no. What you want is what those green pieces of paper with pictures of dead presidents on them will do for you. So it's not that you want more money. It's that you want more security. It's not that you want – do you have kids? Do you have a family?
I do. I have 2 kids.
You do. So what you probably want is for your kids to have a better life. What you probably want is for your kids to go to a great school and them to have, great clothing and a beautiful home to live in and blah, 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 all that stuff. You probably want a bigger house or a nicer house in a better neighborhood or a different car or a better country club, or the list goes on and on and on. It's not that we want more money. It's that we want what money gives us. Does that make sense now?
That makes sense, yes.
Yeah, so I'm certainly not saying that you and I don't want more money. We do. But what we really want is not more money. It's more money so we can do stuff with it. So the challenge when you're setting a goal for money is how do you make that colorful or vivid? Well, you can't. So what you have to do is, and by the way, I have a free sheet that if you go to my website, you can download. It's specifically for goal setting, and it takes you through this process. But one of the things it asks you is, why do you want to achieve this goal? So I'm just going to make up a number, and I'm not asking you what you earn. It's none of my business, and if you want to share that, you can, but it's really not necessary for this conversation. I'm just going to make up a number. So I'm sorry?
That's okay. That's okay. You can make it up. But what I think I remember this sheet. It sounds very familiar. Forgive me for stepping on what you're saying. I think I remember something about this. I don't know if I had seen it on your website, if you brought it somewhere maybe. Regardless, I'm sorry for cutting you off.
Could be, but yeah, if you go to the resources page on my website, then you can download it from what. It might have a date from a couple of years ago, but it's the same sheet. It might say goal setting 2008 or 2010 or something like that, but it's the same sheet. But one of the areas that you're asked to fill in is, why do I want to achieve this goal? So certainly you want to write down how much money. So what I was about to say was, I'm going to make up a number. Let's say you're committed to earning $500,000 this year. But really the important part is not just the $500,000 and by when, which are both important. It's what's that money going to do for you? How is that going to change your life? How is that going to affect you and your family? How is that going to affect the people around you, the world around you? And whatever reasons you have are personal to you. It may be that you want to give more money to charity, or you want to build a school for kids in Africa, or any of the other things I mentioned before. But it's not enough to just write down your goal. It has to be colorful and vivid, and when it comes to money, money's not colorful or vivid. What can be colorful and vivid are the things that the money will do for you. So it takes a little more work, but it's well worth it. If you're committed to achieving your goals, I think that stuff's all essential. And the final step, as you can see on that page, is the commitment. The difference between Gandhi and Martin Luther King and Bill Gates and you or me is the level of commitment. It's not only the size of the goal or the immensity of the goal, it's our commitment to doing it. So you can bet, and I certainly didn't meet him, but I saw the movie several times, Gandhi was pretty darn committed to changing things in India. So committed that he was willing to almost starve himself to death. So committed that he was willing to take beatings for it. Now, I'm not quite sure I'm willing to starve myself to death to earn 3 times more money than I already do, or take beatings too, although you could certainly say that some of the people I work with give me mental beatings. But nothing happens. Nothing happens based on what we want. Nothing happens based on what we wish for. Nothing happens based on what we hope for. Nothing that happens based on what we dream of. The only thing that affects our ability to achieve a goal is our level of commitment. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, high achievers are committed to a goal. So it's great. Here's a perfect example. I want to lose weight. I have lost weight before, except I gained a bunch of it back, and I want to lose the weight again. However, I am absolutely not committed to losing the weight, because if I was, I would be eating healthier, I would be eating less, I would be exercising more and drinking more water, because there is no mystery to losing weight unless you have some type of a medical condition. Drink more water, exercise, eat healthier, and eat less than you do. You'll lose weight. So I want to lose weight, but I'm not committed. The only time you're likely to achieve any goal is when you are 100% committed to it. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Beautiful. Beautiful. So the second thing in goal achievement is you have to have a plan. I suggest that people, including you and me, always, I mean always, know the right thing to do. We tend to not listen to ourselves, though. Some people call it gut instinct. Some people call it feminine intuition. But have you ever had a time where you had to do something and there was a little voice inside your head or maybe inside your gut that said, oh, here's what you have to do?
Yes.
Yeah, and I'll bet you've had that many times during your life. Most of us have this going on constantly, but we don't pay attention to it because either we're not listening at all, or we're listening, but we say, oh, what do I know? I'm just an idiot. We have that head trash, that self-deprecating self-talk that says, well, I couldn't possibly know the right thing to do because who am I? So I believe that each of us is plugged into this universal consciousness that, again, call it God or Buddha or Jesus or Jehovah or whatever you want. I believe we're all plugged into that and that we always know the right thing to do. Here's a great example. I'm involved in a lot of discussion groups on LinkedIn because I'm fascinated by some of this stuff. And somebody was asking, is morality subjective or objective? Well, I believe there's right and wrong. Now, it can be subjective given a particular situation. So perhaps morality in the Sudan is different than here it is in New York. But here, I say right is right and wrong is wrong. There's up and down, there's black and white, and we always know the right thing to do, but we're often not listening. So one of the things that's important in goal achievement is listening to yourself because you know the right thing to do. It's like when you talk to salespeople and they say, well, I want to make more money. Great. What do you need to do? I don't know. Sure they do. If they actually stopped and thought about it, they know what they need to do is prospect more because prospecting is a direct line to a paycheck. It doesn't happen immediately, but you pick up a phone or you send out a tweet or whatever other methods you use for prospecting. Again, we'll talk about those in a later session. Everybody knows that you got to do more of it if you want to reach more people and sell more stuff. So you want to make more money, see more prospects. How do you see more prospects? Do more prospecting, whether it's referrals or networking or anything else. So most of us, as management, when we talk to salespeople and we say, okay, so you want to make more money, so what do you need to do? They go, I don't know, except they do. But they're lazy. They're lazy, they're just not listening, or they don't trust themselves. So I want you to start listening to the little voice inside your head. If you're thinking, what voice? It's the voice that just said to you, what voice? There's a little voice in all our heads, and again, call it gut instinct or anything else you want, but I promise you, you always know the right thing to do. Now, the second thing you have to do is not only listen to yourself, but if you're going to achieve your goal, you have to write what I call a business plan. Now, this is not the business plan that you would take to a bank to try to get them to give you money to invest in a business, but for every goal, you have to break it down into its component parts. So there's lots of things that need to happen if you're going to achieve a goal. For example, Sir Edmund Hillary decided that he had a goal. He was the first guy to climb Mount Everest successfully. Well, he didn't just wake up one day and go, oh, I know, I'm going to climb Mount Everest and get on a plane and go to Nepal and climb the mountain. There was all kinds of planning that had to be done, and I don't know if he did this because I haven't read his biography, but let's say you and I decided we were going to climb Mount Everest. I don't know what shape you're in, Jeff, but I would need to do some exercising first, some serious exercising. Actually, whatever shape you're in, you'd probably have to do some too because we'd have to train for it, and we'd have to get financial backing or pay for it ourselves, and we'd have to arrange for visas and Sherpas to take us up and get equipment. There's a million little things that would take place before we could actually climb Mount Everest. Well, I suggest you want to write all those down. It's not enough to just write down the goal. You also want to write down your business plan for all of the things. And I mean, think about every possible thing that you need to do to achieve that goal. Then, once you do that, break each of those things down into the smallest components you possibly can. I call them baby steps. The reason I like baby steps is because I want things to be easier to achieve rather than harder. For example, it's very challenging to lose 100 pounds. It's not very challenging to lose 3 pounds. So I want to break every little thing that I have to do down into its smallest component parts to make them easier to accomplish. Once you've written up your plan and figured out all the things you need to do to achieve your goal and broken them down into the smallest parts you possibly can, and by the way, I just use an Excel spreadsheet when I do this, the next thing you have to figure out is, in what order do those steps need to be happening? So you want to put them in time and date order so that you can actually take a look at your list and go, okay, what's the very next thing that has to happen in order for me to achieve my goal? You've probably heard that a journey of 1,000,000 miles starts with a single step. Well, you've got to start somewhere, and the thing with goal achievement is you've got to be in action. It's not very easy to take action on losing 100 pounds, but it is easy to take action on losing 3. But you can't do either of those things, 100 pounds or 3 pounds, until you figure out what's the first thing I've got to do and when will I do it by. Making sense?
It is.
Beautiful. Okay.
I got to tell you something. I hate to say this, but if you can give me a sample of that Excel sheet that you put together, would that be a possibility?
Not at all. Ask me for anything, and it's my pleasure to do that for you. I'm just going to make a note here. Send biz plan sample to Jeff. Done deal. You can ask me for anything, my friend. The worst that happens is I go, oh, no, I'm not doing that, pal. But, yeah, it's my pleasure to share that with you.
Would you happen to have an assassin for my ex-wife available?
Actually, I do, except I would feel terrible if your ex-wife got killed. Do you have a new wife with kids, or is the...
Yeah, I'm totally joking. So would I, please.
Now, you said you had 2 kids. Do the kids live with your ex-wife, or do you have another wife now? Or
no, they live with her, but I see them every weekend, which is great.
Oh, good for you. Yeah, I'm divorced now, too. I think I was back then also. Yeah, I'm actually getting along with my ex-wife incredibly these days. The further we get away from being married, the more we've come to be friends again and partners in raising our kids. How old are your kids?
My daughter is 8 years old, and my son is about to become 6.
Wow, got it. I have an 11-year-old daughter and a daughter and a son that are going to be 10 in a couple of weeks. So I can relate, and I also feel your pain of not seeing them every day. For me, I actually love both worlds. I love when they're with me, and I love my single time, too.
Right. No, I'm with you on that, and I get a lot of that lately, so that's awesome.
It's a beautiful thing. Okay, so the next thing that has to take place in terms of goal achievement is you have to figure out, what am I willing to do to either gain pleasure or avoid pain? I believe, Jeff, that everything we do, and I mean everything we do it because we're either trying to gain pleasure or avoid pain or both. And we tend to make things more difficult than they really have to be. So when you're committed, it helps you to see things with a better focus. It helps you to see things in sharp resolution. And if you can figure out why you want to achieve the goal. Remember, we talked about money, and it's not that you want money, it's that you want the stuff. But when it's not even that you want the stuff, it's that you want the pleasure that having the stuff is going to bring you, or avoiding the pain that it would bring you if you don't have it, like college for the kids. So why would you want to earn more money so that you could send your kids to college? Well, you'll have pleasure because they go to college, they learn how to be better human beings, they learn something that maybe they'll make a living with so that you don't have to support them for the rest of your life. They'll have a great experience, hopefully. There's a million things that could happen. You also, at the same time, if you're anything like me, you want to avoid the potential pain of them having to sponge off you for the rest of your life, because as we both know, kids are flipping expensive. And they're not, none of our kids are anywhere near college yet. I can't even, it sickens me to think of what it's going to cost both of us by the time our kids get to college. But
you have twins, huh?
I have twins that are going to be 10, and I have an 11-year-old. So I will have 3 in college at one time.
Oh.
Yeah, I know. I just keep I'm giving them all music lessons, and I said, please, can't one of you become Hannah Montana? Just one of you. I don't care which one. Or Justin, I don't care who you are, just don't become crazy like Britney Spears, but please, just one of you make it big so that Daddy can retire one day and, take care of your brothers and sisters. And actually, my son, it's so funny, I don't want to waste your time with this, but he's been studying guitar now for a year, and he's actually really good. I've been playing guitar since I'm 10, which is a long time, and I suck because I never practice, but he practices all the time. Dad, I'm going to be at Madison Square Garden in front of 18,000 screaming fans. And, there's a kid just shy of 10 years old. And he's actually really talented and works hard. So I'm hoping that he makes it big and takes care of his old man. At any rate, in order to achieve your goals, you need to attach either enough pain to the non-achievement of the goal or enough pleasure to the achievement of a goal. It makes it more likely to happen. So an example of that would be, I told you I lost a bunch of weight previously. The reason I lost a bunch of weight previously was not because my clothes were too tight, not because I felt uncomfortable, although sometimes I did. It was because one day I kind of lived for the beach. I not only live at the beach, I just love the beach. One day I was at the Fire Island where I used to summer with a bunch of friends so we could go meet women. And one day I was standing at the ocean just with my feet in the ocean reading a book, which is something I love to do. And when I came back to sit down, my friend J.D. said, got to tell you something, Jeff. I was looking at you from behind. There sure is a lot of you. Now, this is a friend since high school, and he certainly felt comfortable saying that to me, and I wasn't offended by what he said because it's that kind of friend. But it definitely affected me. It was painful to hear, and I didn't want to hear that again. I didn't want to go through that embarrassment and almost ridicule of having a friend say, there sure is a lot of you. And, I also realized that, if I lost some weight, I'd be more attractive to women, which is something that I consider important. So I wanted to avoid the pain of having my friends think I was unattractive and looking like a whale. And I wanted to gain the potential pleasure of being more attractive to women, feeling healthier. Like now, a great motivator would be, I'd rather that my kids can't outrun me. And they're still small enough that they can't, even though I get out of breath easier, but I know that the time is coming pretty soon when they will be able to outrun me. And so I want to be able to gain the pleasure of sticking around a long time to, dance at their weddings. And I want to avoid the pain of not being able to keep up with them, being ridiculed, stuff like that. So the more pain you can attach to the non-achievement of your goal, or the more pleasure you can attach to the achievement of your goal, or both, which is even better, the more likely you are to challenge yourself consistently and work harder to achieve the goal.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. No, it's very, I think that you hit the nail on the head when you said both. That's incredible.
Yeah, look, by the way, I didn't make that up. That's directly from Tony Robbins, who I'm a big fan of. His motivational stuff is brilliant. I don't think there's anybody better in the game, and he's the one who taught me that one. We do it all to gain pleasure or avoid pain or both. So the more pain and pleasure you can attach to the achievement or non-achievement of your goal, the more likely you are to achieve it. The next thing that has to happen is you have to figure out, how do I know if what I'm doing is working? I quite often consult with companies that bring me in to speak to their salespeople and find out what's not working. And what I find quite often is they are doing stuff, but they have no idea if it's working. They're doing it because their manager told them to, or some other salesperson told them to, or they read a book, or they tried something and it worked once, but they're not measuring it. In any goal, if you cannot measure it, something's wrong. There's always a way to measure the progress towards the goal, and it's crucial that you measure your progress. It's why Weight Watchers makes you weigh in every week. because they want you to see your progress. If you haven't made progress, they want you to realize that so you can have that negative feeling and work harder the next week. If you have made progress, it feels good. It feels good to say, I lost half a pound or I lost 3 pounds or whatever it is, and it's a cause to celebrate. And we tend not to want to measure, especially salespeople. I don't know if we did this when I was with Susan, but I teach salespeople to measure their cold calling activity because it's crucial, and it's the easiest thing to measure. Because if they measure it, first of all, they know what's working, and if I'm showing their metrics, I can immediately tell salespeople what they're doing wrong based on their activity measurements. But salespeople tend to not want to measure things because they don't want to be held accountable. Salespeople feel that
in addition to that, I think it's okay. I'm sorry. They also feel, I believe, that it's just too much work on their plate. By the way, when they're measuring their
well, yes, you're absolutely right. So you have to make it very easy for them to do. I use a very simple spreadsheet where people can just make tick marks by hand. So it takes up really 0 time. They don't have to be entering stuff into databases. I mean, although certainly we want them to put stuff in their database, whatever CRM you're using, that shows them what they've done. But in terms of tracking the actual activity, not the result of each call or what I said or the prospect said, but I want to measure the activity, and it's very easy. And again, if you'd like, I'll send you a sample of that.
I would just about to ask. That's huge for me. Absolutely huge.
Cold call tracking sheet. Just make another note. You got it. So measurable progress feels good. And again, remember we talked about breaking things down into its smallest parts. I want salespeople, I want you to celebrate every single little success. It should be a cause for celebration. Now, I don't mean that you should go nuts when you lose half a pound. That's not time to go crazy. But certainly I want you to pat yourself on the back or have somebody else pat you on the back for you. It's like, here's a great example. Salespeople are almost always given goals by their management. And most salespeople consider it a cause for ecstatic celebration when they achieve their goal. And most managers do the same thing. Now, I want people to consider achieving their quota a cause for a celebration, but it's not time to go nuts. And as a matter of fact, my personal management belief is that when a salesperson hits quota, the reward for that is you get to keep your job. Now, when I'm going to go crazy for you is when you hit 25% over quota or 50%, or you double your quota. That's the time to really go crazy. But I do want you to celebrate each little success, because when you're celebrating success, it feels good to celebrate. And again, you want more of that good feeling. The flip side of that is you should not beat yourself up over the setbacks, and we tend to do that. I know I'm as guilty of that as anyone. I wanted to lose 10 pounds, I lost 3, but then I gained back 1. Oh, I'm an idiot, I'm an a-hole, I'm a loser. Well, it doesn't work. And the reason that doesn't work, the beating yourself up and that mental negative self-talk, is because your mind is always listening to everything you say. Your mind, just like my mind, is listening to everything we say. And it was pointed out to me about, it must be about 4 or 5 years ago, by somebody very close to me. She said, do you realize how self-deprecating you are constantly? And I really didn't. And she started pointing it out to me. Now, it turns out I use self-deprecating humor when I'm training, and I use self-deprecating humor when I'm speaking professionally. But I didn't realize I was doing it in my regular life. It doesn't work, because when you call yourself an idiot or a loser, your mind starts listening, and your mind starts wanting to fulfill what you're saying. Here's a perfect example. My 11-year-old daughter is not the most graceful in the world. Like you, I'm sure my kids are the greatest in the world, and they're the most talented and all this stuff, except I try to be very objective. Some kids are graceful. Avery's not the most graceful in the world. And occasionally she does a trip and a fall where I don't think it's, necessary, where somebody else might not. But it's just who she is as a kid. Her mother, from a very young age, told her, what that word means? Klutz. It means you're ungrateful.
No, I know what it means. I know what it means. Okay, and it's an insult, by the way. If you look that word up, it's actually something that was taken offense to seriously, by the way.
Oh, wow, I didn't realize that. Well, but typically it means now that you're just not graceful. You fall, you trip, you do stuff like that, you drop stuff. So from a very young age, my ex-wife would tell Avery that she's a klutz. And my daughter constantly says, I'm a klutz. Now, why would she say that? Because she's a klutz? Well, she's slightly klutzy, but she's not a klutz. But she believes it now. She didn't do well in gymnastics when we sent her to gymnastics class because she believed she was a klutz. And she's got it in her brain because our brain listens to the things that people tell us, but even more to the things we tell ourselves. So she's got virtually no chance of being graceful because she believes it and the people around her other than me tell her that. Same thing for you and me, my friend. I want you to celebrate the successes and not beat yourself up over the setbacks. And when you notice yourself doing that kind of self-talk, don't beat yourself up over being negative to yourself either. The thing to do is gently acknowledge what you're doing. When you hear yourself doing it, it's hard to catch ourselves, but when you, oh, you know what? I realized I was just telling myself I'm an idiot. You know what? I'm not an idiot. It's okay that I said that, but I'm not an idiot. In fact, I'm an intelligent person who sometimes does idiotic things. And the perfect example to that is, you know, I don't know about your kids. Your kids are probably perfect little angels just like mine, but even my perfect little angels occasionally act like children and do stuff that I'm not happy with. Well, I never, ever tell them that you're bad. I never tell them that they're stupid. I don't use any negative words, but sometimes I will say, you're a wonderful kid, and right now you're acting badly. So that they get the difference between who they are and the action. And I want you to do the same thing for yourself. And the fact is, in terms of measuring, it's very difficult to argue with facts. You can't argue with facts. You can argue with subjective stuff, but you can't argue with facts. It's why when I teach cold calling, the first thing we teach is how to measure it. Because you can tell me all that you want from your gut instinct, but when I've got the facts to back it, you can say, I'm making 1 million calls a week. Really? You've only ticked off 15. So is it 1 million or 15? I think I get through 75% of the time. Really? Well, according to the sheet here, you only get through 20% of the time. So let's work on improving that. So I want your goals to be measured, and it's easy to set up measurable systems, and that the cold call tracking sheet will give you an idea. The next thing that's important in goal achievement in the inner mindset of selling is when should you take the specific actions that you have to take. And I don't only mean when in terms of the timeline, so if you've got a 6-month goal, you know, something has to happen now, so I'm not just talking about that. I believe that there is a personal prime time for each of us to do each of the activities that we need to do. And when you're mindful about it, when you're actually thoughtful about it, you tend to produce better results than when you do it in a mindless fashion. So here's what I mean by that. You may have heard of biorhythms or body clocks. We have a body clock. It's why we get tired at night and we're not as tired in the morning for most of us. So, but even during the day, most of us have personal biorhythms, and they're personal because it's different for each person. Sometimes it's the same by coincidence, but yours are probably different than mine. So here's a perfect example of this. I'm the type of person that when I open my eyes, I'm wide awake, I'm ready for action, I jump out of bed, I'm good to go. I don't drink coffee, I don't do anything in the morning to get me going. I'm just the type of person that jumps out of bed, I'm raring. However, if I'm not standing in front of an audience, if I'm in my office on an office day doing, you know, paperwork or business development or something like that, by 3 o'clock, I'm doing the head nod. You know, and if you could see me, I'm actually nodding my head right now like I'm falling asleep. Because for me, 2:45 to 3:15 is the time my body starts shutting down naturally. So for me, it's not a great time to do something that takes a lot of intensity or a lot of focus. And the example I love to give is cold calling. Now, I'm not a big fan of cold calling if you don't have to do it, but it's still the quickest and most cost-effective way to get appointments if you don't have them. I do my damnedest to avoid cold calling like the plague because I hate it so much. Even though I'm great at teaching it and great at doing it, I don't want to do it myself. But when I have to cold call, I do it first thing in the morning. Now, do I do it first thing in the morning because that's the best time to reach people? No. I do it first thing in the morning for 2 reasons. One is, if I do it first thing in the morning, then I've done the most important thing I could possibly do that day, and I never get to the end of the day and go, oh, man, I meant to cold call today. Well, I'll do more tomorrow, which never happens. But more importantly, the reason I do it at first thing in the morning is because that's when I'm mentally the sharpest and physically the most awake. And cold calling is a game where you need to be mentally sharp, as you well know. The prospect is sitting there waiting for you, just waiting for you to stop talking so they can give you the objection. So you need to be mentally on your game. Sorry?
Absolutely. No, right. I'm agreeing with you. Absolutely.
Yeah, man. So for me, cold calling is best done first thing in the morning. Well, it's the same thing for you. Not that you need to do cold calling first thing in the morning, but you need to kind of take a look at when's the best time of day for me to do each of the things that I need to do. The other thing that I like to do personally is I like to get, if it doesn't have to do with my body clock, like being sharp, I like to do the things that are less fun first and more fun later, because I'm more raring to go first. I'm willing to do stuff that I like less, and I would rather do stuff that it's more enjoyable later in the day because I'm more likely to do it even when I'm tired. Does that make sense for you, Jeff?
It does.
Beautiful. Okay. The other thing that you have to do is be accountable.
I'm sorry, can you go back? Can you go back to that slide for a moment, please?
Sure, man.
Just give me 1 second.
Sure.
Please.
By the way, Jeff, I'm happy to send you these slides if you'd like. And again, I'm recording it, and when you listen to the recording, you will actually see the slides too. The recordings are on YouTube.
Perfect, because either way, I'm more of a writing guy. I'm sorry, I don't want to.
Oh, no, that's fine. I'm good with that.
And I'm putting these here going into notes. I'm believing it on an iPad for PDF, so it's a little easier for me that way. Don't laugh. Sorry.
I'm not laughing at all. I love my iPad, and I'm a note taker too. When you write stuff down, it tends to sink into your brain more than when you just hear it. And by the way, again, I'm happy to send you the slides, but I would rather you don't share them with anybody.
No, come on, I would never do that. What are you nuts? That takes money out of your pocket. I would never do. I'm a fan. We're on the same page.
You know what? I appreciate that, first of all, and I believe good fences make good neighbors. I'd rather say it rather than have somebody go, well, you didn't tell me that.
Yeah, no, so, it should be, by the way. It should be something with all due respect.
Well, it's no disrespect for me to say it to you. Again, I'd rather say it and take the chance of you being insulted. I would even think that you would do that, and I don't think you do it. I'd rather just say it, and that way there's never any confusion.
No.
That's the way I like to work with clients, prospects, and everybody else.
Yeah, that's assumed going in. No one's going to take that from you. I'm sorry. Hold on 1 second.
Got it. You tell me when you're ready to move on.
No problem. Yeah, you had to see me. I'm writing as I'm talking to you, but you had to see me before with these guys. I'm sitting there going, oh, look, I didn't make this up. You got to take this guy's class. Who wants to take this guy's? And of course, obviously, it became late in the game, but I passed it around to a bunch of people, and they were all, oh, yeah, I'll take a look at that. I couldn't get them. I tried.
Well, last time I started with 9, and we had 3 people join us for 2 people joined on session 2, and the third joined on session 3. So it's not too late if anybody wants to join us. I mean, it's probably not good for you. It's it's self-defeating because you'll divide the attention. But if you have people that would like to join, it's not too late, and they'll have access to the recording for today.
I appreciate you saying that. It may or may not be good for me. I think it would be, because if you hear other opinions on things that I obviously don't think of, I think that would be great. And again,
you could. I could make the argument either way. Here you're getting 100% of my attention, and it's also useful to hear what other people have to say. Absolutely. And like last time, it was 12 people. It was just a great size, and that's why I limited it to 15 this tops. And I really thought we were going to fill it up, but your call. If you want to bring more people in, it's not too late. They're welcome to join. After session 2 or 3, I think there would be too much to catch up on.
No problem. And I'm ready whenever you are. Thank you.
Okay. So the next thing is accountability. I find that, actually, I'll back up a second. Actually, I shared this with you earlier and via email. One of the most important things to me in the entire world, besides my children, is my word. When I say something, I'm going to do something. I would rather break my arm than break a promise to someone. However, I have a much harder time. It's much more challenging for me to keep promises to myself. Why? Because I love me, and I live with me, and I let myself off the hook easy. So I won't let myself off the hook if I promise you something, but I find that I will let myself off the hook when I promise me something. So my experience is that most people have that same issue. Now, it's not that you can't do it on your own, but and the name of the book that I wrote that I'm taking most of this from is How to Be Your Own Coach, except even coaches need coaches. So left to our own devices, most of us will wimp out on the stuff that we promise ourselves to. So I find that if you want to achieve your goals, you probably need to have somebody who's going to keep you accountable. It doesn't have to be a professional coach. that's going to coach you each week, but you do have to have somebody that you make promises to. So when you set your goals and you have the reasons for them and you've written them down and all that other stuff we've already talked about, it's best to make it public. The more public you can make it, the more people that you can tell about your goals, the more likely you are to achieve them. Because now let's go back to the weight loss goal. I'm going to lose 25 pounds. Well, if you've told a bunch of people, then they're kind of watching you, and they're asking. And maybe they're watching what you're eating, saying, hey, should you really have that veal parmesan? Wouldn't you be better off with some steamed vegetables? And they're noticing when you are achieving your goal. But the best is not just making it public so that people around you know it. It's actually having some type of accountability partner. Now, that's what a coach does for you, but you don't have to pay a professional coach just to keep you accountable. And in fact, at one point, I formed a group with 4 other business people that I respected, and we called it TAG, T-A-G, the Accountability Group. And what we did was, every Monday morning at 7:30 a.m., we would get on the phone, and we would make promises to each other. We started out with just professional promises, business promises, but we eventually ended up doing personal promises too. And each of us had only 5 minutes each week. So there were 5 of us, so the whole call lasted 25 minutes. We were done by 8 o'clock each week. So at the very first call, all we did was make promises. I'll make this many cold calls today. I'll make this many sales presentations today. I'll do, we would just make promises, and all of us would write them down. On the next call, at the 5 minutes, we would report to each other on, did we keep our promises? If we did, we got applause. If we didn't, we got our asses kicked.
Really?
And we committed again, yeah. And the promise was that we were going to be hard on each other. And that's why, by the way, having an accountability partner like a wife or a husband or any relative, and typically even a friend, is not the person who's going to be a good accountability partner. Because, again, they love you and they're going to be easy on you. It's like if I made my mother my accountability partner, my mother very much wants to see me be successful in life. Probably only so that I can take care of her grandchildren, but she very much wants to see me be successful in life. But if I called up and said, hey, Mom, I'm going to make 50 cold calls a day for the next 5 days. Well, if I called her up next week and she said, did you make your 50 cold calls a day? And I went, no, she'd go, oh, that's okay, sweetie. I know you'll do better this week. Well, that's not what a good accountability partner does. A good accountability partner says, hey, a-hole, you told me you were going to do it. What the fuck happened? Pardon my French. What the hell did you do? Don't let me down, because I'm not going to be invested in this if you're not.
Hang on, that's me. Hang on. Sorry, I hit the wrong button over here. I apologize.
No sweat. So you need somebody who's actually going to be pissed off, because you need somebody who's going to be mad that you didn't keep your promise to them. And eventually, the group went on for about a year, and we broke it off because we found that we had become so friendly that we stopped being hard on each other. So you need somebody that will keep you committed to your goal, somebody that you can make those promises to for all those little baby steps that you're going to do. And I suggest you want it to be somebody who you check in with probably at least once a week. The more often you can check in, the better off you are. But at least once a week, because left to our own devices, we tend to let ourselves slide. The other thing you want to do is when things get tough, many of us do break our promise and we just stop. The thing to do is just keep swimming. And in fact, my kids and I watched Finding Nemo for about the 8,000th time just the other night, this past weekend. I'm guessing you've seen that with kids at your age?
You mean the film that was nominated for Best Screenplay back in 2004, if I remember correctly? No, never heard of it.
Well, if you remember, at one point, Dory, the one who forgets things easily, she drops the mask with the address of the guy who, stole Nemo or took him out of the ocean, and it drops into an abyss, and Marlin, Nemo's father, doesn't want to go into the abyss because it's scary, and she says, just keep swimming, 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 and that's what you got to do. And with an accountability partner, you're more likely to keep swimming promise to yourself, or when things get tough, or you're not seeing measurable results. So you want somebody who can help keep you accountable. You also have to plan. And part of the inner game of selling, the part of the mindset of selling, is taking the time to plan and realizing that the right amount of activity always brings you the right results. In fact, when I do management training, and I came up with a program about a year ago for managers, because I came to realize, Jeff, that the big problem in most sales organizations is not just the salespeople, it's that the sales managers don't know how to do their job. So I came up with a program called the Sales Manager as strategist, trainer, and coach. It's a one-day program specifically for people who manage salespeople. And what I find is most sales managers manage by results. So in other words, I'm your manager, I call you into my office, "The Beach, what the heck is going on? You haven't closed anything in 3 weeks. What the hell are you doing?" Whereas the smart manager certainly is interested in results. Of course, we all are, but what they manage to is your activity rather than your results. Because if you can figure out the right amount of activity, you will achieve the right results. And metrics rule. Do the numbers on your screen right now sound familiar? I don't think I showed you guys this when we were together, although it's possible. I'll start going through it, and if you've heard it before and know it intensely, then just stop me. So you can see where it says 15, 7, 1, 8, 1, 50 accounts?
Yeah, they're ratios.
Good. So what those numbers mean is I used to work for a guy named Steve Schiffman. And
yeah,
Steve,
that's why and I hate to cut you off, but that's the book that started me, the cold calling tactics that work.
Cold calling techniques that really work, exactly right. So Steve actually talks about these metrics. I think you're on a speakerphone, right?
Yes.
Yeah, because there's a delay when you speak, so that's why I keep talking over you. Go ahead, you talk.
No, what I'm saying is one of the things that fascinated me about you was the fact that you did work for him, and then you guys weren't just good friends. But I love the school.
We're definitely not good friends, Steve and I. But when I first met Steve, this was the first thing he showed me. He said, every day I make 15 dials. And when I make 15 dials, I speak with 7 people. And when I speak with 7 people, I set 1 appointment. He then told me he goes on 8 appointments a week because, if you do the math, if he's setting 1 appointment a day, that's 5 in a week. But he actually would go on 5 new appointments a week, but also go to 3 people a second, third, or a fourth time because in my business there's almost no such thing as a one-call close. So he would go on 8 sales visits a week and close 1. He would do that 50 weeks a year, which meant he would open up 50 new accounts. Now, if you just took those first 3 numbers, the ratios, the 15 to 7, that's the number of dials you make to the number of times you get through to the person you wanted to speak to the number of appointments you set. If you give me those 3 numbers, I can immediately tell you what a salesperson is doing wrong when they cold call, just based on those 3 numbers. So,
how's that?
Well, if the ratio of dials to completed calls, the 15 to 7, is not correct, I know that either you don't know how to get past the gatekeeper or you don't know how to leave a voicemail that gets people to call you back. And the ratio should be approximately that 15 to 7. We're looking for about a 2-to-1 ratio there. If the ratio of 7 to 1, which is what we call completed calls, in other words, you got through to the person that you wanted to speak to, and that doesn't mean that I necessarily called you and you picked up. It might mean I left you a voicemail and you called me back and then we talked, or we traded a few voicemails but eventually we talked. So if the ratio of completed calls to appointments, the 7 to 1, isn't good, then I know you don't know your rebuttals, because that's the key to getting appointments. It's not having a brilliant crafted opening, which of course you do have to have, but it's more important to know what to say when the other person says no. Now, Steve's ratio, and by the way, he wrote the book. He wrote the Bible of cold calling. He has a ratio of 7 to 1. In other words, he speaks to 7 people and gets 1 appointment. I speak to 2 people and get 1 appointment. Now, he wrote the book, and he taught me how to do it. So why am I better? Because he's a pain in the butt, and he's the first to admit it. Although, don't tell him I said that, but he said it a million times in front of me. He goes, I'm a pain in the butt. In fact, he said that in front of a prospect. You'll laugh at this. I went on a sales call with him one time, and I had no idea why he wanted me to come on the sales call with him. But during the sales call, he said, "You're probably wondering why Jeff is here." And I'm sitting there thinking, I'm wondering why Jeff is here. And he said, "The reason Jeff is here is because I'm a pain in the ass, and your people will hate me if we do business. If we do business, Jeff's going to do the training because they'll love Jeff." He was right. But he wrote the book on cold calling, and he only gets 1 appointment for every 7 people he speaks with. That's terrible. So clearly, he either isn't using his own rebuttals, or he's just so annoying that he turns people off. I speak to 2 people and get 1 appointment, which means I'm better than the guy who wrote the book and who trained me. Now, I don't necessarily expect the salespeople that I teach or that you teach to have a 2-to-1 ratio in terms of completed calls to appointments, but I fully expect them to have a 4-to-1 or a 3-to-1. So if you don't have a 4-to-1 or a 3-to-1, if it's more like 5-to-1, 6-to-1, or 7-to-1 like Steve, I know you don't know your rebuttals. So anytime you can give me those 3 metrics on a salesperson, I know what they're doing wrong, which means as their manager, I can help them. And that's the point that you have to get across to them when they don't want to keep metrics. It's like, the way I can help you best is by knowing what you're doing. More importantly, well, not more importantly, as importantly, once we start tracking activity, Jeff, eventually we get to the point we know what your real numbers are. And the reason I say real numbers is because there's no way any one real numbers. So let's just take Steve's numbers for a second. Let's say they were your numbers. So today you made 15 dials, got through to 7 people, set 1 appointment. Tomorrow you made 10 dials, got through to nobody, but still set 1 appointment because somebody called you. No, sorry, that wouldn't make sense. Got through to nobody and set no appointments. And then the next day you made 2 calls, but 5 other people called you back. You got through to those 2, so you got 7, made 2 dials, got through to 7 people, and set 6 appointments. Well, which one of those is your right number? None of them, because no one day makes a difference. What we're looking for is what are your numbers over time. And it really takes a minimum of 30 and more like 60 days to really start understanding the amount, the real metrics for your people. Now, I said as importantly, and the as importantly is once you figure out what your real numbers are, you can find out what's the right amount of activity for you. Because the right amount of activity for you is going to be different than the right amount of activity for me, is going to be different from the right amount of activity for Jamal or any of the other people that you work with. So you need to figure out what's the 15. So in this example, the 15 is the number of dials that Steve Schiffman, my ex-boss, used to make every single day because he figured out that if he makes 15 dials every single day, he will speak to 7 people, set 1 appointment, meet with 8 people a week, close 1, and open 50 accounts per year, which was his goal. See, the 50 accounts is his goal or his personal self-imposed quota. And we just spoke for over an hour on quotas and goal achievement, but on this set of numbers, the 50 accounts, the goal, is the least important number by far. The most important number is the 15 because that's the bottom line activity that Steve figured out for himself by tracking his numbers over time that if he does that every single day, he will achieve his goal. That's why I say as a manager, you want to monitor activity rather than results because when you figure out the right amount of activity for each salesperson, and by the way, this is crucial, it's different for every salesperson. If it's the same, it's just coincidental. So I think when I met you in New York City, there were about 20 people in the room. There's no way that all 20 of them have the same amount of activity to do each day. No way, because they're different. Some are going to be better at getting through to the right person. Some are going to be better, not so good at getting through to the right person, but better at getting an appointment. So you have to figure out your personal numbers. Once you do that, then you're able to work backwards and figure out what's the 15 for you. So you take, it's easy to do. So here, the goal was 50 accounts. So you take your goal or your quota, and then you work backwards to the 1. I'm actually pointing at my screen as if you can see it, which you can't, but you want to work backwards to what's my average dollar volume per sale? How many meetings do I need to go on to close that much dollar volume? In other words, in this case, it's 8-to-1, which is terrible also. How many appointments do I have to set to result in that many meetings? Because not every appointment results in a meeting. How many conversations do I have to set that many appointments? And finally, we get to that first number, in this case 15. What's the number of dials I need to make to have that many conversations? So you work backwards, but you can't work backwards until you know somebody's real numbers. Is that making any sense?
It is, but what's confusing me a little bit is that slide in between. What is the slide that's in the middle?
I skipped that, and I'm going to come back to it in a second. Don't worry about that.
Okay.
We'll come back to that in just a second. But when you can work backwards, eventually you can show somebody. So if I'm managing you, Jeff, if these were actually your metrics, eventually I'm going to get to the point where I say, Jeff, we figured out that all you have to do is dial the phone 15 times every single day. And if you do that at the end of the year, you're going to open up 15 new accounts and have the $500,000 in personal income that you're looking to have by December 31st, 2012. Because once you do that, your life becomes simple. All you have to do is dial the phone 15 times every single day. Here's a perfect example, and I'll tell you what this one is. my biggest client for 8.5 years in a row was a company called Optimum Lightpath, which is a division of Cablevision. And I worked with them for a long, long time, and I was very intimately involved with their upper sales management, with the president of the company. I mean, these guys, when I taught them this stuff, they just went nuts. They had metrics like you wouldn't believe. They had spreadsheets that, no kidding, you had to use a magnifying glass to read them because there was so much information and they were so small. And I had a guy in a class one time who had sat in my class the year before. It was a more advanced class. And, you know, it was nice to see him again. We got to talking about this type of thing. And we started talking about his metrics. And we talked about his goals. And it turned out, this is a different conversation. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but there's a difference between what I call the personal goal and the professional goal. So the professional goal is the goal that the company gives you. You have to close this much business. But the personal goal is typically higher. Because when you close that much business that the company said you have to close, you're going to earn X. So I'm just going to make up some numbers again. So maybe your company has told you you have to close X amount of business, and when you close that, you'll earn $100,000. And that's the goal they gave you. But in your mind, you go, $100,000 doesn't cut it. I need $175,000. And there are very good reasons why you need that extra $75,000. And we don't have to go into what those are, but, and again, I'm just making up numbers. Well, in talking to this gentleman who was sitting in the class, he would earn at his goal, between his salary and his commission, $140,000. But in speaking to him, I found out that he was really committed to earning $170,000. He needed another $30,000. I'm sorry, $175,000 more. And we had a long discussion. Because I asked him.
I'm sorry, you did? Okay.
Yeah, I said, is $140,000 going to do it for you this year? He goes, no. I said, well, why not? He goes, because I really need to make $175,000. And I asked him, you know, we had an extensive conversation about why. There were all kinds of things that he wanted to do with that other $35,000. Here's the point of the story. The brilliant management there who tracked everything was able to give me his tracking sheets. And I was able to take a look at his numbers, and we were able to show him, this will blow your mind, that if this particular guy, who was good at what he does, if he would make 3.5 more dials per day, I hope you heard that right, 3.5 more dials per day, not 3.5 more contacts, not 3.5 more appointments. If he would just dial the phone 3.5 more times every single day, he would earn $35,000 more at the end of the year. Because based on his personal metrics, dialing the phone 3.5 more times would get him enough contacts and enough appointments and enough sits and enough sales to pick up $35,000 more. Now, if I said to you, Jeff, I will hand you a check for $35,000 at the end of the year, and all you have to do to earn it is dial the phone 3.5 more times a day, but you can't make a half a dial, so let's make it 4. Would you dial the phone 4 more times a day if I would hand you $35,000?
I would do it about 8 more times a day if I could.
Yeah, of course you would.
Right.
Of course you would. So that's why I say when you're managing, you need to manage the activity, and you need to understand the true goals of your salespeople and manage that. I teach sales managers to manage to the personal goal, not the professional goal. The professional goal is the quota that your company says you have to have, but that's not what most salespeople are about.
I have to tell you something. I think I've read something similar to this, but you made it extremely clear today. I mean, there's not even a question how important these are. I mean, that's really huge.
Beautiful. Now, the slide that was throwing you off a little bit, it's simply that when you know your metrics, and these were the metrics we're talking about, when you know your metrics, there's 5 ways to make more money. So I'll go over each one. Holy crap. Well, we're not going to do an hour session today because it's almost 7 o'clock. So the first one is to make more dials, and here the dials is 15. So if you make more dials, you'll make more money. Yes?
Yes,
clearly. So let's just say for a second that you make 15 dials a day. If I can get you to make 30 dials a day, will you make more money?
In this instance, yeah, right? Doubling up.
Absolutely. Because if you double the amount of dials, you're going to double the amount of contacts, double the amount of appointments, double the amount of sits, and double the amount of sales, approximately.
Right.
Because if you double the first one, everything else doubles approximately. So the first way to make more money by knowing your metrics is if you know what you're doing now, you can make more. The second way is to change the dials to completed calls ratio. And if this was a different slide, I could actually have the letters above it. But the dials is the 15 and the completed calls is the change the 15 to 7. You'll make more money. In other words, if you improve that ratio. In other words, if you make it 15 to 8. So if now you dial the phone 15 times and get through to people 7 times, if you can get through to people 8 times, with the same amount of dials, will you make more money? Yes, absolutely you will. Now, most people think it's a neat trick. How do I get more people to pick up the phone? How do I have more conversations with people? You get better at getting past the gatekeeper, or you leave voicemails to get more people to call you get back, which, of course, you know that's what I teach. The third way to make more money with your ratios is change the completed calls to appointments to ratio. And here that's 7-to-1. Completed calls is a 7, appointments is 1. So in other words, if you're speaking to 7 people and getting 1 appointment, if you can get 2 appointments from speaking to 7 people, will you make more money? Sure, because you're going on more presentations, you're going to close more business. The neat thing to me is, in this example, Steve makes 1 appointment a day. So if he made 2 appointments a day, he'd make a heck of a lot more money. But let's just say he made 1 more appointment a week. Not 1 more a day, 1 per week. Would he make a lot more money if he made 1 more appointment per week? What do you think?
Well, hang on, I'm confused because now, I mean, this is with my SAT scores many, many years ago. It wasn't so great.
So we're talking about this middle one, the completed calls to appointments ratio, CC to A, which on this slide is 7-to-1.
Now, when you say completed calls, you mean literally having a conversation with someone, whether they're biting at you or not. That's part of that 7.
Correct. A completed call means you got through to the person that you wanted to speak with. So if I'm calling you to set an appointment, I got to speak with you unless your assistant can set appointments for you. But if I speak to your assistant and he or she can't set appointments for you, that's not a completed call.
No.
If I left a message, it's not a completed call. It's only a completed call when I speak to the person that I want to speak with. Got it?
I got you.
Okay, so in this case, Steve speaks to 7 people and sets 1 appointment. And I'm saying if you could change that ratio from 7-to-1 and make it 7-to-2, in other words, you speak to 7 people, you set 2 appointments.
Right.
In this case, because this is a daily ratio, Steve would be setting 1 more appointment per day or 5 more per week. But I'm saying forget about 1 more per day. What if he only got 1 more per week? Just 1 more measly appointment per week. Would he make more money?
Based upon the amount you're saying that he's had, this is, again, I'm a little lost and I apologize. The 8-to-1 Now, the 8-to-1 is
right now he's setting 1 appointment per day.
If he makes...
forget about the 8 right now. Just stay with the top line, okay? See the 1 on the top line? There's 15, 7, and 1. The 1 represents the number of appointments he's setting every day. He's making 15 dials every day. He's speaking to 7 people every day. He's setting 1 appointment every day.
That means he's got 5 appointments per week.
Correct. Perfect.
Okay.
Now, I'm saying, what if we change that ratio? We'll make more money, because this whole slut trip. So you'll make more money if you can change that 7-to-1 ratio. So let's improve it and make it 7-to-2. In other words, when I speak to 7 people, instead of getting 1 appointment, let's get 2 appointments. Will that make us more money?
Yes, because that's where you need to, where there's a possibility, obviously, but that's where you need to hold on to the 7 to get okay, I get you.
Sure. So when you improve the completed calls to appointments ratio, in other words, you get more people to agree to meet with you, you will make more money. But here's the interesting thing to me. He's doing this once a day, so he's getting 1 appointment a day or 5 per week. And I'm saying instead of changing it to 7-to-2 the ratio, which would mean he get 5 more appointments per week because he's getting 1 extra one per day. What if he only got 1 more appointment per week? And the question I asked you was, would he make more money? And the answer is absolutely yes, because with 1 more appointment a week, that's 50 more appointments per year. Or if you take a month vacation, that's still 48 more appointments in a year. Just by getting 1 more appointment per week than you are right now, that's 48 to 50 more appointments every year. You could literally suck at selling. And with 48 or 50 more appointments, somebody's buying. So it doesn't take a huge increase in your activity, in your your success, to make a heck of a lot more money.
So you're coming up with the 50. It does. You know, you're coming up with the 50. Just help me out with this, and I do apologize for spending so much time on this. So you're having the 8. The 8 is the 8 appointment. This is where I'm confused.
That's 8 sales visits. So the 1 on the top line represents the number of appointments set. So he would set 5 per week because that's 1 a day. But Steve would actually go on 8 appointments per week. And when I met him, by the way, he actually said to me, he goes, so Jeff, I dial the phone 15 times a day and I speak to 7 people and I set 1 appointment. I do this every day of the week. How many appointments do you think I'm going to have next week? And I said what you just said, 5. And he said, no, it's 8. And I said, I don't understand. If you set 1 appointment a day, how do you go on 8 appointments a week? He said, well, I go on 5 new appointments each week, but I also go back to see 3 people, a second, a third, or a fourth time, because, you know, in my business, there's almost no such thing as a one-call close. Occasionally, but not very often. So I have to go back and see people 2, 3, 4 times. So that's where the 8 comes in. The 8 is actually sales visits. And then the 1 on the second line is closed sales.
Gotcha.
Yep. You with me now?
Gotcha.
Okay. The fourth way to make more money with metrics is to change that closing ratio. Change the 8 to 1 and make it 8 to 2 or 7 to 1. In other words, get better at closing people. That'll make you more money. And the last way is to change that 1 on the second line, change the sales. In other words, close more. Cross-sell, upsell, charge more, get better at negotiating. All those things will make you money. But there's 5 ways to make more money with metrics. But if you're not tracking your metrics, you're hoping. It's traveling without a map or without GPS. We could both drive to California, except if I'm using GPS and you're just using your nose, I'm more likely to get to California quicker. Especially if I'm going to, like if we're going to San Francisco. I mean, you got to drive west.
I don't think you remember the size of my nose, so I may beat you. I may come a little close.
I don't. Here's the last slide, and it has to do with planning. You have to, if you're going to be successful, part of the mental game is planning. Where am I going to get my leads from? And most salespeople I find don't do a very good job of that. I consider part of every salesperson's job to be developing leads every day, because if you've got to make a certain amount of calls every day, then you've got to know where those leads are going to come from. What activities am I going to do each day, and when am I going to do them? And I believe it's crucial to calendarize. I suggest everything should go on your calendar. And when I meet with salespeople, when a company calls me in to consult because their salespeople aren't performing, the first thing I always do is say, show me your calendar. Let me see your daily calendar. And usually their appointments are on there, so that they know where they have to be when they have to be there. But I very seldom see any salesperson that has prospecting time on their calendar. I suggest that there's a real difference between being busy and being productive. So most salespeople are busy, but few are productive. You can be busy without being productive, but it's very hard to be productive without being busy. And in my opinion, there's only really 4 things that make a day productive. If you set a new first appointment to see a prospect for the first time, or if you conduct a first appointment, that's productive. If you move something forward in your pipeline, that's productive. And if you close business, that's productive. Other than that, if you didn't do one of those 4 things in a day, I say your day probably wasn't productive. But you need to put everything on your calendar, because things that are on your calendar are far more likely to occur than things that aren't. And you have to plan for how you're going to stay accountable. We talked about the accountability factor being important in achieving your goals. Well, you have to plan for how will you stay accountable, whether you're going to do it for yourself and keep your promises to yourself, or who are you going to do them with and when. Does that all make sense, Jeff?
It does. Hang on one second. This is probably one of the most important things I've seen, because I can relate to being the busy man as opposed to the productive man. And again, there's a lot to it. I mean, I get so bogged down. I just don't want to do it. I walk away. I spend too much time thinking, wow, look at my attention deficit disorder kicking in. You want to talk about negativity?
I hear you, man. Yeah. I truly do.
So, all right, good. Thank you.
It's my pleasure. So it's actually 7:01, and we didn't leave any time for coaching, and I apologize, but I do have to jump onto another call.
That's fine.
So what we can do is we can start the next session with some – actually, we'll just leave some time at the next session, and this was the longest session last time too. Did you find this useful?
What, are you kidding me?
No.
Of course, I would tell you. The ratio piece to me, the ratio piece, the planning piece, and also getting a couple of those documents that you're doing to track things are all important to me, because that's the information. That's the information.
Yeah, I have to get to I have another call to jump on, so I don't know if I'll get it to you tonight, and I have to be in New Jersey tomorrow, but I'll be back in the office mid-afternoon, so I should be able to send you those mid-afternoon, and I will do my very best to also get you the link to so that you can review this, both the words that we said, as well as you'll be able to see the slides. And again, if you want, I'll be happy to send you the slides, as long as you agree to keep them private.
Yeah, no, so, I'll sign anything you want electronically to state that.
You don't need to sign anything, my friend. If you say if you say you're not going to share it, I believe you.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Here's what I would love it. Here's what I would love you to do for next time. Look, you're a big boy. I can't assign homework to you, but I would suggest that write up your business plan. Write up some of your, first of all, if you write up your goals and would like to share them with me, I'd be glad to go over them with you and give you any critique on whether I think they're specific enough, colorful enough, all that stuff, whether you use my forms or any other forms that you like, I'd be glad to do that. And I would strongly urge you to write up your business plan for at least achieving your financial goal and share that with me. And if, I'll give you, again, a critique on anything I see in there that's missing or something that I think could be improved. It's my pleasure to do that. The only thing I'll ask is, don't leave that for the minute before the next session, otherwise I won't have enough time to review it. But you can do that at any time.
Okay, and then, I've never done this before. I'm going to be very honest with you. When it comes down to business plans, setting things up, getting to those financial goals, I am the guy who just runs by the, how do they say, the seat of his pants kind of a thing. So do you have a sample I could look at as well? I'm big into samples, sorry.
Well, I definitely have a sample of a business plan that I can show you. I'm not willing to share my financial goals with you.
No, I don't want to know any of that stuff. I'm not interested.
But the business plan that I will share with you will show you, it was, at one point I was looking to change my business model, and I kind of wrote up all the things I needed to do, by the way, based on a person who I was paying to coach me at $600 an hour. So okay. I think you'll find it very obvious. And with the goals, look, you're welcome to fly by at the seat of your pants, but my hunch is that the reason that you invested the money and the time with me and yourself is because you're looking to do something different. Make more money. Yeah.
I'm looking not to fly by the seat of my pants. Yes.
Hang on just 1 second. Randy? Hey, how you doing? I am in about 2 minutes. I'm just finishing up another call. I sure will. Speak to you soon. That was the next session saying, hey, where are you?
Sorry.
And I'm not even the leader on that one. It's okay. And she said they were having a problem with the webinar, so that's beautiful. So yeah, I'll send you that stuff tomorrow, Friday the latest.
Sure.
The recording will also be up, and it'll just be a link you can click on. It'll take you to a video on YouTube. It's not a public video, so the world can't see it, but you'll have access to it. And in between now and 2 weeks from now, whether you do the homework that I suggested or not, that's up to you. But you have access to me during those 2 weeks. It's not like we're just going to talk every 2 weeks. And if that's what you want to do, that's fine. But if you have questions for me, if you have anything at all, call me, write to me. I consider that part of the deal. I'm truly committed to having these 90 days be a breakthrough for you. So please take advantage of that. And the one thing that I often find is I'll get people, I'm so sorry to bother you, or I know I'm taking up your time. You're paying me for my time, Jeff. So it's never a bother. And if you call me at a time that I can't speak, I'll simply say, I can't talk to you right now. I'll call you back and we'll make an appointment, okay?
I appreciate that. One thing I just want to say before we hang up, you had mentioned the reference to Finding Nemo. I neglected to tell you that was P. Sherman, 42 Wallaby Way, Sydney, Australia. and again,
right.
Of course, and I've never, ever heard Ellen DeGeneres say it, nor did I ever hear or see that movie.
That is great. Well, you may be pleased to know, as my children are, that they're going to be showing Finding Nemo in 3D in theaters sometime in the fall, I think it is, for like 1 day only or something. Oh, yeah, that my kid. Daddy, can we go see it? We just saw it last night. Oh, but we want to see it in the theaters. Yeah, me too. Don't worry about it.
And Albert Brooks is in that movie. He's one of my all-time favorites. So I love him.
He's a classic. Are you kidding me? He's fantastic.
Yeah.